Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Urban Odyssey. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. It's been a while since I've had somebody new on the show, somebody that I haven't had returning, or just somebody new, interesting to talk to, somebody to interview. So today I'm going to be doing an interview with Mr. Nick Koutsobinas. Nick is a philosophy graduate and former Newsmax investigative reporter who left corporate media as the creator of the documentary, hopefully, series Hyper Demoralization and the irrelevant publication, The Rocky Mountain Oyster, which is the name of his YouTube channel. Nick focuses on exposing corruption, censorship, and institutional power, describing himself as a salmon swimming against the mainstream. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Nick up. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks
You
for being
s-
here, buddy.
yeah. You said irrelevant, which it kind of is, but I meant the right irreverent. But
Oh, that was
so
actually that was actually my bad. That was
you're
just that
no, I know. I just thought it was funny.
I do that because when I do reading and stuff, then usually it'll be about some type of tech term or technology, and there are so many big words, and a lot of
Yeah,
times I'll miss little. It almost looks exactly the same without the L, but that's my bad. It's
yeah.
not an irrelevant. It's an irreverent publication.
No, yeah. It's all good.
But thank you for being here, man. Okay, so why don't you just give everybody a little bit of an intro of you, who you are, other than that little intro?
Oh man, I don't like. I That's hard. I don't really know. Like just a journalist. Is trying his best. Believed in sort of the ideals of what I considered like the ideal uh, journalism age, like back in the 1970s when journalism was just like a guy on the street with like an ugly dude on the street with like big sideburns and just like trying to figure out what's going on. And now it's kind of morphed into like after September 11th into this like hyper partisan thing. It kind of split off from there into like all these factions and like I just couldn't identify with that, so I just and I didn't see like a market for the stuff that I wanted, so that's why like I just like I'm gonna try to like make something that I want to see. So yeah, I made this documentary.
So yeah, we're going to talk quite a bit about that because you and I met on an X Space probably about 2 weeks ago, and
Hmm.
we struck up a conversation. And I was like, "Man, we get along great. We're interested in the same things." And you had introduced yourself and mentioned that you had the documentary, and then I eventually, at a later time, I watched a little bit of it, and we're going to show people some clips and a preview of it. But I was impressed by it, and so I was like, let's do a show together, and I'm pumped up for it. But I was going to say we're going to use this term hyper normalization, hyper demoralization.
Hmm.
So, in your own words, when you say hyper, or how do you mean that? How should people? What image should people have in the mind for hyper this, hyper that?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, Originally, like I had spent like a lot of time thinking about what I'm gonna even gonna call it. Like I went on back and forth on like a lot of different names for it. Like I think one was like you know, kind of like sleepwalking, sleep something, or like American Dynamo, something that like sounded cool, but like actually had some meaning too. Um, and I kind of went back to like kind of why I made it in the first place. Like, there's this documentary called Hyper Normalization by a British guy named Adam Curtis, and it was made in 2016. So call it synchronicity or whatever, but 10 years later, you have hyper demoralization. And it was really intended as a compendium for that. That's kind of like how I want to end. Like I like the style of Adam Curtis's. Like I feel like just it kind of opened me up to like different way of looking at journalism. Like you can and like make it exciting and like have like fun music, and like it doesn't have to be like a Ken Burns thing all the time. But
It's going to take a new form. Rather, it's going to be very novel.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Uh, like I wouldn't want to say novel, but like I I approached it in the sense of like how I kind of like want to approach cooking. So a lot of it's like sort of like a lot of the things that are sourced in it are sourced like around a certain time period. And so, maybe things like certain music may be more punchy, but I tried to make it apt for the feeling of the time that it was in, and kind of so people can get like a sense of the zeitgeist of what it was like.
Mhm.
And yeah,
I was
we
going
already
to
got. Yeah, go. Let's run
roll
through
the
it. Let's
trailer.
Yeah, let's roll the trailer so people get an
Okay,
idea.
let's go ahead and bring up the trailer for the film now. It's about a minute long. I'll go ahead and get that going for us. Let me make sure that we're good to go.
Oh, by the way, I couldn't hear the sound on the intro that you were running, so maybe hopefully this works.
Okay, just let me know if that's the case.
Process which goes very slow, and it's divided
Can you hear it? Okay, cool.
in four brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism, Leninism. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans. Exposure to true information does not matter anymore.
That was great, man. I'm really
Thanks.
impressed by your production quality. That was what got me. It's really well made. That was like something you would see at a movie theater, honestly.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, I actually like wanted to do like a X spaces. Like, let me know what you think about this idea. Like, I wanted to do like an X space where like it's like a virtual movie theater, and so I was gonna like line up like all these old trailers while people are like waiting for like the actual documentary to start. So there's this one I can't like. Oh, it's so fucking funny. It was like this old '70s trailer anyway. But I was gonna line up a bunch of old trailers, and people would like watch it while they're waiting in the X space, while they're waiting for the thing to start, and they're in the X space, and then the show starts, and then the people all have like I'll message people like an usher, like a ticket usher. I'll like send them an individual message to like a private live stream, which will they can like use to like as a ticket for admission, and like the ticket for admission would be like retweeting my documentary or something. I don't know.
It's
I
pretty
thought it was
cool.
like
They
I
have features like I know not on like specifically like an X space, but I know that Substack. If you get people to share your Substack, you can actually turn on a feature where it will give people rewards. There's like a reward system.
hmm,
You should, like, there's all kinds
Okay.
of stuff like that, especially for sharing the documentary and stuff. Speaking of, for
Oh
anybody
yeah, I
who
think I
is
saw that. Yeah.
interested, his links, Nick's links, are in the description on YouTube and on Rumble, and then they're scrolling across the bottom of the screen if anybody needs them. But please check out all of his channels on YouTube. Give him a subscribe. We're going to get him linked in on the YouTube video whenever we finish and get it posted and stuff. But yeah, you'll be able to find all of his stuff there if you're interested. All of your documentaries, or all of the, which ones are not on YouTube, which ones are paid only, and which ones are public.
Yeah, thank you. So uh, part 1.5, and I guess I got to explain that. So it's part one and then half of part two because I ran out of money to finish it. And that's on YouTube and Substack. And then, so that aside, there's just a part one, which I kind of like redid the audio for because I shared it from Reddit. Uh, and I guess people were like complaining about something about the audio issues, so like I tried to like reformat it. And after I sent another post on Reddit of like, "Hey guys, I uh, redid all the audio. I spent like a week doing it, and I got no sleep." And then Reddit banned me, so I couldn't. Like,
I
uh,
I I hate Reddit because I've literally gone on there to ask for book recommendations, and whatever answer I've gotten from like the majority, Reddit will give me the opposite. So they'll tell me
hmm,
like the popular stuff that everybody says is the most popular. They'll say that nobody's. Why are you reading that? Nobody reads that stuff.
really? They like criticize you for what you wanted to read?
Oh, they criticize. If they, what did they ban you for?
Because I don't know. I guess.
Uh,
Oh, I you know what it was? Somebody had like I after I shared my like the redid audio version of it, some random account doxed me and they're like, oh, this guy worked at like Newsmax and stuff. It was like, okay, but like what does that have anything to do with my doc? So like I guess they immediately attributed it to like, oh, he's like I don't know, whatever the worst of the right wing is, like they attributed to me.
Criticize anything but the actual content of your work, pretty
Yeah,
much.
and well, that was like, and then like other people would like kind of joining in, taking that side. It's like, why don't you guys just watch it instead of like Kruse? And like, first off, I get like criticism of Newsmax. Like, I'm no one to defend it. Like, I quit the publication, um, but yeah, it was just like, who gives a shit? Like, are you guys supposed to be like enlightened and shit and like not judgmental? And like the first thing you run through is to be judgmental.
The
Uh,
first thing that tips me off, honestly, is whenever you make something, and this is, the base, pretty much, as I assume. When it's me, it's like I guess you saw something in maybe your documentary, or in my case, the whatever I put out, and it made you mad. And instead of criticizing, this is why I don't like it, this is what
yeah.
I disagree with, they just attack anything but that. And that's what tips me off that maybe it's not genuine criticism. And you know what? I'll be
Hmm.
the first to say sometimes it like upsets me because it's like I want the criticism. It's like if there really is something wrong, or there's something that is not correct, or there's something that I need to look at again, I really would wish they just tell me what it is, but nobody ever does. Nobody ever
Hmm.
tells you or
Yeah.
me, like, this is why I'm upset. I don't know if that's the same as your experience, but
No, no, no. I mean, obviously, the criticism wasn't genuine, and obviously, they did watch it, and like something did upset them. Um, but I don't think that they could juxtapose in their mind the idea that somebody from Newsmax would like have like a criticism of, let's say, Israel, and that would go like does correspond to like what you're thinking. But I think on the some cases of the left, they think um, of what they're supposed to agree with in a I don't know in a Masonic sense almost, like as opposed to like just truth for its own merit.
Right.
Uh,
It's like if you struck a nerve almost. It's like you only know because people act weird now that you did it and they didn't act that way before. Similar to that.
mm,
There's just like
well,
a weird
I didn't
vibe.
know I didn't know the people before, like these people that criticized me. I didn't know who they were. They just kind of came out of the woodwork of Reddit to like take me down. It's like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's another tip off. Well, I was going
Well,
to.
one thing I want to say is like I think Ghislaine Maxwell had like was like a top redditor or something.
Yep.
So
It's
I've been
likely.
highly suspicious of the platform.
It was very troubling that there was this was probably the most interesting part of the whole release, and I think it speaks a lot. The release of all these files was that they apparently had pulled documentation. They were investigating a leak on Reddit. Somebody had basically made a post like, "Oh, I was an Epstein henchman, and I've got stories."
Hmm.
And they went on Reddit and they were talking and they were doing like Q&As. And then the only reason anybody really knows about this is because it was in the Epstein files release. So it's like Epstein was looking, like had records, like they were looking at this as like, how are these people talking? So that almost gives it some validity, but that also tells you that they did have some way to maybe an inside source at Reddit, or maybe
Yeah, no, I think 100%. Like when all that Twitter file shit was going down, I was like I was like the one at Newsmax that was like um bring it up like, shit's not right in Denmark. And I was like writing all these stories about like how, I believe that Twitter has been co-opted by the feds, and I brought this up to like a really prominent lawyer who like went on to go try a case about this later on. But beforehand, when I brought it up to them, they looked at me like I was crazy. It was like, there's no way uh, Twitter is colluding with the feds. And I brought this up, and like I got in really deep on that story, and I was corresponding with one of the people that was going to be given the files for the Twitter files, and I was like, "Hey, I did all this work. I feel like I should have like a shot at, getting access to this data and like looking." And I was just fucking stonewalled. And I was like, you know,
was this
like I
before Elon Musk bought it?
no, this was like right after Elon Musk bought it. So like after Musk bought it, he opened up Twitter to like uh Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss and like a few. I'm not gonna name like who I was talking to, but you know, I will say it wasn't Barry Weiss. like
Right.
like she's like a Masada up. Like I've never talked to her once, but
I'm
like
just like I would have thought that they would be gung ho for that story like that. I feel like I don't know why they don't want that story. I felt like they ever since Elon Musk took over, they've relatively kind of turned on Twitter.
yeah, I was just in like a spaces earlier, and like people were like talking all kinds of shit, but they were like, there's like a strange optimistic attitude because Nikita Beard announced that he's stepping down as ex head of product and moving himself into an advisor role. Uh, so there was speculation there, like maybe Elon Musk axed him, and I think that's probable because I don't see a reason otherwise for him to have stepped down. Uh, but
Orders
yeah,
from above.
yeah. So I mean, I guess that's kind of promising. That's kind of optimistic and hopeful, or unless it's all show, which I think it is in some sense, like wrestling. But
It is pretty much. I was going to play the Ehud Barak clip, and I was going to
yeah,
say
sure.
that this was actually I'd never seen this until your documentary.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
So I don't know if we were talking before we got started the show, but I don't know if you had said something like people had said that there's a lot of new stuff in it, or you said there's a lot of new stuff in it, but there was a lot of stuff that I haven't seen in the documentary.
Oh, okay. And, and just like part one, I think it's just the audio. Maybe I've added like a few things here and there. I can't recall. I think
Well, I
I
just
did,
mean
but
like you dug up stuff that I haven't seen yet.
like yeah, maybe in terms of like overall 9/11 docs, I want to say like I went really hard in the paint to like do the best I could really to like bring out the best. So
Here,
yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and play. We'll play maybe 3 or 4 minutes out of it. So, and just we'll go ahead and let people see it. Another
sure.
thing that you do really well is that you're willing to bring in movie clips that are about whatever you're talking about. So, movies that foreshadow the
Hmm.
event or make a reference to it. But it's weird because when you watch it, it's almost like they gave you all of the stock footage that you would ever need if you wanted to
Hmm.
like make this as a live action movie. It's just kind of eerie because
Well,
it shouldn't be like that, but
well,
apparently.
well, no. Let me address that real quick. Um, there's like metaphysical reasons why like I haven't just said what it is, but that is addressed explicitly in part two, which is paywalled on my Substack. The reason I'm paywalling it right now, and so once I get enough money, I can finish it. But
These are production levels, so I
um,
think it's fair.
there's a big epiphany in the end of part two, which explains why all the movie clips are there. So
This is pretty much like a movie. I think it really like I thought that when I first watched it. It wasn't just like a low budget thing, and I'm really surprised because I was like, hey, how many movies or how many of these have you done? And you're like, this is the first one I've ever done. So
yep. Hmm.
okay, let's go ahead and play this clip here. Let me go ahead and
Sure.
bring my screen up.
Roughly 1 hour after Ivan suggested bombs were placed under the World Trade Center, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak happened to be available in London to shed light on the matter and suggest on BBC World News that an obscure Middle East militia leader known as Osama bin Laden had orchestrated the demolition of the Twin Towers from Afghanistan. But one of the peculiar things about Barak's BBC appearance in London is that for the last 6 months, immediately after leaving office in Israel, he came to the United States to work for a company in Wayne, Pennsylvania called SCP Partners. One of SCP Partners' subsidiaries, and that of its management company, Safeguard International, included a company that produced nanocomposites and atomized aluminum, a key component of nanothermite, a highly charged explosive that was found in the dust and metal of Ground Zero. In 2001, there were a few countries or companies capable of producing nanothermite, and even fewer individuals still with access to the World Trade Center to apply it. But Barak, through his Mossad connections to Kroll Associates, which had secured the security contract to the World Trade Center after the 1993 bombing, did have that access and means to blow it up. Bin Laden, on the other hand, did not have access to the World Trade Center and could not have the means to produce nanothermite that led to the destruction on 9/11.
The bin Laden sits in Afghanistan. There is a source
Well, who
of
else would you
terror.
identify, though?
Uh,
Because we're not saying he's responsible for this necessarily.
No, we don't say that he's responsible, necessarily responsible. We know where other terror thugs are living. We know that Ferganskaya Dolina in Central Asia is a major route for drugs, but at the same time, major route for terror. And I know that President Putin is highly committed to the struggle against terror, and I feel that he should be part of this international effort. I believe that the MI6 is highly capable. You have proven it along decades. Your own skills in standing firm politically and acting pointedly, operationally against terror. And we should cooperate with all,
preemptively,
both preemptive and by diplomatic means, namely rogue states. There are 5 of them: Iran, Iraq, Libya, North Korea. These kind of states should be treated as rogue states. And the same applies to even to leaders like Arafat. We heard him just recently condemning this. I praise him for this condemnation, but he personally is responsible for many terror events that happened in the last few years. Same happened in some other capitals in the Middle East.
Ehud Barak.
That's pretty interesting. It's one of those clips that, you mean, maybe at the time it aired, maybe even 5 years later, but 2026, you look back at it in 2026, what caught my eye, the reason that I told you that I wanted to play this is because when I first watched this, what I was thinking to myself, nano composites, nanothermites, very interesting, because I just did a couple shows talking about, nanoparticulates and what they're doing with that in the modern time. So that caught my ear. But then he just listed pretty much all of the countries that they just have been busy for those last 20 years fighting. Let me see if I can get those again.
Root for drugs, but at the same time, major root for terror. And I know that President Putin is highly.
He says Putin's great. He says he thinks that he's really great with terror. He needs to be involved in their efforts. What he says.
Committed to the struggle with terror, and I feel that he should be part of this international effort. I believe that the MI6 is highly capable. You have proven it along decades. Your own skills in standing firm politically and acting pointedly, operationally against terror. And we should cooperate.
Preemptively.
Both preemptive and by diplomatic means, namely rogue states.
Rogue states,
there are 5 of them:
Iran, Iraq, Libya.
Yeah, I can chime in. I can comment on that.
Please, go ahead.
I mean, those are all the states that General Wesley Clark named, with the exception of North Korea.
That's an interesting one.
Because Wesley Clark named 7.
Yeah.
I don't believe he mentioned Somalia or forget the other one. Maybe it was Syria. But, I wanted to comment on just because I set this documentary up to be very rigid. I wanted people to be able to come to their own conclusions, and even myself, I come to my own conclusions on this, on how I set it up. And it's something just struck me. Isn't it interesting that immediately after leaving office in Israel, he comes to the United States, with the perfect timing to, let's say, set up demolition charges in the World Trade Center. Let's just say that's possible.
And be best friends with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. And then throughout those 6 months while he's here in Wayne, Pennsylvania, immediately book a flight over to London to appear on the BBC at 11 p.m. Eastern time, the same time that the Twin Towers are coming down. He just happens to be available on the biggest network in the world, Western world, to speak to that. And then we get BBC's Jane Stanley telling the world 20 minutes before World Trade Center 7 collapsed that it's going to collapse. Wow, isn't that a coincidence?
I was just going to say, let me just preface with my opinion on it, is that I think it's really more crazy when people say that there's nothing suspicious. Now, that's not to say that I'm prepared to say this is absolutely the one person who did it, because it was so many people.
I don't think it was. I think it was a really small group.
You think it was small? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more.
Well, I mean, the same actors keep getting brought up. So, I think whereas a lot of people
had to look
are
the
aware
other
of
way.
it. yeah, I think a lot of people were aware of it, and a lot of people
That's what
were
I
forced to
mean.
look the yeah, were forced to look the other way. Um, I think in terms of its implementation and its planning,
So
probably
big.
probably a sizable group, but I wouldn't
But when I say
200.
that,
Okay, yeah.
I was just gonna say when I say that, I really am thinking primarily of in addition to everything that happened on 9/11. What I'm thinking of is like there were so many financial tactics and things that were set up months in advance,
Mhm.
and like a lot of people had planned out ways to park money and put money in certain locations so that it would also, in addition to killing all the people, taking the towers down, and the dust goes everywhere, in addition to all that, get rich, like filthy rich. And whoever looks the other way, whoever's willing to play ball,
Mhm.
you can get rich too. But if not, we're going to make you look crazy. That's the way it works. And so that's what I really mean. It's like this group, so obviously it was compartmentalized, very much so. Some, one group did possibly installation, another group would have done finance, another group would have been
Mhm.
just planning, and then somebody would have
Yeah.
had to get credentials. Somebody would have had to probably bail a few people out along the way, just like cleaning up messes along. That's what I mean. It was like even then, because
Yeah.
sure, maybe one group, small group, did plan it. So
Mhm.
many other people are like genuinely complicit, like blood on their hands complicit. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Um, I would say that some people when you said the compartmentalization thing,
Mhm.
I think that's how these operations operate. Um, so with the Israeli aspect, I can talk about that more and the chain of how the evidence was basically in the chain. The chain of events was basically in the hands of Israelis and Zionists the whole time. But
They do the dirty work.
there were a fair amount of unwitting people that acted on behalf of the plan that I don't think
That's
were
true.
aware of it.
Monarch mind control. People really what I've come to find, and this is only because I've looked into and talked to people who have gone through that. I think
Hmm.
that there's so much of this, like how they were running all of the simulations. Like on the day
Hmm.
of, there were like all of these simulations that were like literally perfectly
Yeah, war
simulating.
games. Yeah.
But then they said that
Mhm.
there's no way that we could have ever saw this coming. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait,
Meanwhile, they had a war game or a flame flying into a flame flying into a building drill.
and those are
I don't.
covered.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and so you're messing with like I think it might have been like not NORAD. I think it might have been NORAD.
There were tons of
NORAD's
them.
radar. Yeah, you're messing with the radar systems and stuff of all these things with the war games, and yeah, it's going to confuse people, and obviously it was intended to do that.
But then
Um,
you like the people who have mind control, like who can basically they can do these things and then for kind of dissociate, detach.
oh,
Um,
I didn't mean compartmentalization
well, no,
in
no,
like the
this
in the mental sense. I
no,
just meant like
I was
in the
just adding.
planning sense.
I was just adding on to it.
Okay.
I didn't mean it like you were right to interpret it that way. But what I meant was like when they carry this out, the way they get innocent people involved is
Uh-huh.
people who are kind of, let's just say what, they're owned by somebody. They have to take orders. And so what happens is like they get roped into it under false pretenses. They just say, hey, you need to do this, and it's just for a training exercise or it's just for practice. And you're not really doing it. But then all of a sudden, you really are doing it. That's how they kind of rope innocent people into like active operations. They tell them that it's just a simulation, just training. And, it's really sick. It's sick how they do it. But
Well, I think I'd probably like want to pick your brain because I mean I think uh you obviously like have like a very vast knowledge and are probably coming at this from like a lot
I've,
of different ways. So
I've talked to and listened to, and that's an important part. And again, why did I want to have you on the show? Because I talked to interesting people, and then you teach me something, and then maybe let's say somebody taught me something, and here I am, and I'll teach it to you. And so that's how I've learned so many different things, is talking to people, just because everybody's got
Hmm.
something interesting, especially if they have a documentary and they know what they're talking about, and they can put the stuff together, and like they can have an active train of thought. That's all I'm really looking for. And then if you get those people together, you actually learn stuff from each other. But it's like the state of things today, a lot of times you don't feel like you're um, not getting transactionally, but like everybody is doing something for each other. You don't feel that. And if you
Hmm.
don't feel that, I don't think that it's a worthwhile place for you to spend time. That's why I'm interested
Yeah,
in stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. It does feel very transactional. I think that's kind of like a good segue to like what I wanted to like talk about coming when you asked me to like what did you want to talk about coming into this.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
I th- I think a big thing like I think a lot of this goes back to the Federal Reserve. And what that thing did was when you inflate the money supply, you end up stealing people's time away from them. And you know, the wars in, the Middle East, the trillions of dollars that we spent over there to like, you know, kill all these people and stuff. I mean, that was a tragedy. That was a tragedy. Um, there was another tragedy that people didn't talk about, and that's what happened to America. You know, the the devalue of our dollar. You
People don't know
know,
the math. It's really simply, sadly, that they don't know how the numbers work.
yeah, yeah. The, I mean, Thomas Massey, he kind of illustrated it perfectly. Like, if you have like a glass of lemonade, okay, and then somebody comes along with the glass of water, like a jug of water, and then pours all that water into the glass of lemonade. Well, now it's diluted. And that's what happened to the dollar. You pumped all this fake money in there, this paper money, in, into the financial, into the economy. And now you have to have more dollars to pay for the same shit. I mean, it's basic, yes, but the metaphysical implications are huge. I wanted to like illustrate an
Well,
example of this.
yeah,
Hold on, I want to
go ahead.
illustrate an example of this real quick. Um, in like the 1904 World's Fair, like you had like all this cool art. You had these people that made these cool ornamental plaster structures of like Art Deco, and it was beautiful, and you know everything was very decent. And I I feel like the metaphysical implications is that when people don't have the time to devote to something like that, um, you end up seeing that reflected. And I think art is a perfectly good example of that. Like, I don't see the art being good nowadays. I
I don't
think
either.
it's hastily made, and people just want to like get rich quick, and it's understandable why. So you have this conflict where people want to get rich quick and just make cheap art, and you know it it's a reflection of
Your dreams.
uh, well, I was gonna say a reflection of just the time being stripped away from us, the time equaling the inflation of money. You know.
Well, I was going to say one thing that I really like, because we were talking about it in the metaphysical context. They say that time is money, and
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the realist sense, like if you look at things objectively, as a human being, the one currency that we're born with is time and attention, because we spend time
Hmm.
and we pay attention. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
back in the day, they would say, we say again, but they used to say again, a
Hmm.
gain. And so when you
Huh.
do something again, It's if you're repeating it, it's if it's not new anymore. If you've done it so many times, you're just doing it again. You're just
Interesting.
you're just
Yeah,
gaining. So time is money.
that's interesting. Yeah, I've been like trying to learn Greek lately, so like I've been like kind of learning
Language
like
is important.
all kinds of Greek words and how they kind of like translate to English and the interesting nuances. So yeah, that's interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, time is money is a very popular saying. But
I
then,
think it's become cliche a little bit.
true.
And I would like people to like have a visceral reaction that these fucking bankers are stealing your time. They're stealing your time. You
And
know,
attention.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what makes up your being. So let me just cap that off. Your time and your attention. That's really what accumulates, you know, at the end of a person's life, like literally on your deathbed when you're dying. That's what accumulates in your soul and your being. And so that's what's
yeah.
being taken from you. Like if people ask, was gold the basis for currency? And there was a lot to do with gold and metal, sure, but I think if you really want to know the truth, the realest currency is blood. Blood is the ultimate currency. Human
What do
life.
you what do you mean by that? Like go into that a little bit more.
Well, if you look, for instance, in the Bible, Cain and Abel, Cain kills Abel, and the earth cries out, is what God says. The earth cries out with your brother's blood. So it's almost a debt that needs to be settled, if you will. And
Okay.
this could be, in my
Hmm.
actual, I guess, hypothesis is that this is the basis for all of the human sacrifice. This is why they do it, and this is why, even more frighteningly so, it seems to work, and that's why they keep doing it. Like you don't do that if it doesn't give you something. That's like, why would you do that? They're doing it for a reason, and that's the scariest part of all the conspiracy theories is that it seems like that whatever Epstein and them were doing, he had all the money in the world. It seems like he was pretty successful, so that's the
Okay.
scariest part of the whole thing. And I think that's
I,
why that works. That's why it exists in this dimension. It's because life is valuable.
I mean, I can't understand why they do what they do with the child
They get
sacrifice stuff
they
or
get
whatever.
something that makes it worthwhile. I don't know either, but all I can
Okay.
do know is that
I
you
know
don't
it's
do it unless
I
there's
know
something
what's in
valuable.
I know what's in my blood, and my blood is fucking pissed off, like really pissed off, like just
That's why they say your
uh,
blood boils.
yeah. I mean, and we're coming to a head. We're there's no avoiding it. We're coming to a head. The boomers are getting older. They're getting more tired. Um,
Everybody knows it's
the the Gen Xers, the Zionist Gen Xers, the neocon Gen Xers, they're not of the caliber that the boomers were, or of the greatest generation. And the the neocon Gen Xers, the Gen X generation is schismatic right now, and there are people in the Gen X history. I'm a millennial, but um, they're really pissed off, and if they think they're gonna persist in this campaign of power laundering and money laundering into Israel, um, yeah, I think they're in for a rude awakening.
think the thing that I have a problem with is, I think the real division now is not left versus right or red team versus blue team. It's really the people who can acknowledge objective reality. And that's what Orwell said. Orwell said, Big Brother is going to say two and two is five.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're 100% in that Orwell moment. I see it all the time on Spaces. I see it on my Spaces. Like you'll come in like these you know fancy debaters will come in with their Latinizing of words and these big long legalese and stuff, and that's not how truth works. Truth is simple. It's that's
Destruction
it.
by dialectic.
Yeah, it's simple, and Meanwhile, people are getting stupider. They're like watching TikTok. But at the same time, I don't want to go. I don't want to be negative. No, I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be negative. Um, I think there is. Um, I hate. I hate using cliches. I hate using the word awakening. But yeah, I think there is definitely like, okay, instead of awakening, I'm gonna go with a tired of the shitting.
Mhm.
People are tired of the shitting. Like they're over it. And I think I'm seeing that more and more. People are fed up. They're tired of it. Uh,
Yeah, but and that's all true. But really, I think people run into the most problems because, like, hey, I would like to talk about it with somebody, but some people
sure.
don't have the ability to acknowledge what is right in front of them, and they want to almost make up these excuses or
Yeah.
like justify it, and that's what makes it valid. They don't realize that part. Like, they don't realize that is what makes it into being.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, as you see, yeah, you got some Hegel up there.
If you can
I,
polarize anything, doesn't matter. Like, okay, like let's say that there's something
mhm,
that you don't want to be ever be solved. You want to put a roadblock in it. All you have to
okay.
do is have a WWE wrestling match, a red team versus blue team, a
Hmm.
circus, or a
Yeah.
dialectic.
Well, what's your interpretation of that right there?
Of the Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah, and maybe how that translates to.
Okay, well, there's two actually that really these should be taken as very much the same thing, or let's just say very similar. The
Uh
other
huh.
one is kayfabe. Maybe you've heard of that
Yeah,
word.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Basically, it's just a WWE wrestling match, and it's no coincidence that they actually got WWE running the what education department. You got the lady from WWE is actually running the education department now, so it
Yeah.
figures.
Linda
But
McMahon, exactly.
yeah, so
Uh,
force and make believe.
yeah, yeah. Um, what's the definition that they say? Just as pro wrestling presents a stage fight as legitimate context, the Illuminati present the world as a contest of ideologies. In reality, it is a charade designed to convince the rules they live in a democracy. Was it the
Rubes.
rulers?
It's like an old.
Oh,
It's from
rubes. Sorry,
an old
I
quote. Yeah, it's an
no,
old term.
my eyes are fucked up.
It's fine.
Yeah, uh, yeah. Um, I I think that's a perfect analogy for
It is. It's
what
theater.
we're in.
Shakespeare knew that. Whoever Shakespeare, whoever they say that maybe it was a bunch of different people, but he said the whole world is the stage, and the men and women are merely the players.
Hmm.
A lot of times, there's a very deep shortage these days of simple, clear wisdom, and I think sometimes you can find a lot of truth in even some of those things. There's another one. Let's see. I like this one. Hell is empty. All of the demons are here.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot. I probably get criticized for it from the Christian originalist. I mean,
Well, then they got a real
uh,
problem because they don't know what they're up against. Jesus tried
uh,
to warn them, but
yeah. Well, what I mean is like I kind of think that like the your place on earth is a place that you can make heaven or hell, and
it's exactly back to what you were talking about. It is the same idea that people are literally having their time and attention, which is their lifeblood. They're being extorted for their most. Actually, my real belief is that it's actually a gift from God. That's what's being stolen from you. God gave it to you, and they have to really do some good
that's interesting.
brainwashing to
I
get you to
like
give
that.
it up. But they can't steal it. They have to literally make you give it to them. They can't actually
Oh,
influence. They, like, put it this way, they're parasites. Just
I
like a
really like how.
parasite.
No, that's special, man. I really like how you put that. That was cool.
My buddy
Uh,
James, I told you about the guy, buddy James Carner, who I guest host his show. He wrote a series of books. They're like on his website. They're digital download. They're not. Like you don't buy a physical copy; they're free. But he did a
Okay.
series of books, and they're called Breath Wars, and he talks
Hmm.
about that. So he really helped me put that together, and he wrote those books, and it lines up with what people call loosh. That's how they know of this in the public, but they don't call it breath. They just call it some abstract term, which I don't really understand where that term came from. But that doesn't basically, it's like a fiat dollar. They're not stealing your lifeblood. They're just stealing this piece of paper from you. Same idea, but it's like, no, in the most literal sense, whatever is being
Yeah.
stolen from us is so valuable that even like demons, like and I mean that by just the worst people, the people who like scam the elderly, people who like abuse children, they're just like horrible, disgusting demons. They're not like human beings as you and I are familiar with. That's not familiar to what world we live in. So they're unlike us. They're just demons. That's how I mean that. And
Yeah.
they have to
Yeah.
steal it from us. It's so valuable to them that they're willing to do these unspeakable things, be it for money.
Yeah, I think like they wave it in our face and stuff to like send us a message. I think that's exactly what happened. It translates perfectly to what the Charlie Kirk thing was.
It's like
Yeah.
interestingly enough, back, I said your blood's boiling, but back in the day, when they figured out that if you blow off steam, like your emotions, if you're angry, instead
Hmm.
of like it used to be in the medieval times, they used to think that if you kept thinking or you kept being in that, like if you stayed in that state of mind, you would invite more of it. And so it
Hmm.
wasn't until the steam engine that the idea of blowing off steam, meaning to like lean into that emotion and maybe it'll go away, that came with the idea of the steam engine.
You know what? I think if I were to fulfill some of the ideas that have been racking around my head about what has made my blood boil, and blow off that steam, I could. I feel like I could meet myself in a transcendent moment of peace. Like I really do. Um, I think
It's a fine
this is a
line.
the, I yeah, I get it. I get it. Um, the apprehension to people speaking like that.
Well, I mean, it's
But
like
it
sometimes it works. I'm not saying it doesn't always. It's like, but some people take it and like do really bad things with that. So I'm not saying there's no one size fit
yeah,
all. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. I wanted to say I think like I think feminism is like a kind of a problem. Like and let me explain that. Like I think you know the instantiation of women into normally male professions when you know I like to believe that the better of the two men would come out on top. Has that whole like natural dynamic that has existed in human society for thousands of years has all of a sudden come to a head and been gummed up.
That's actually
And
like
I
it's always been the same justification. They make you think that, oh wait, there are other reasons why that was like, why did we keep it that way for thousands of years? There's other reasons, right? No, it's actually because of one reason, and they always went back to the creation story.
hmm,
And it wasn't until the 1800s when you had people like Blavatsky and Annie Besant and all of these early women in the occult movement that decided that they could use Satanism and Luciferianism and say that it empowered women because
what?
it gave them the
Hmm,
freedom to write and do what they wanted, but they also saw the liberation of, Lucifer as the liberator, Prometheus. They saw the
uh-huh.
Promethean myth and they took that and they've decided to associate that with women, and
Huh.
women need to have rights. This was actually very surprising because this was not recent. This was how the movement began.
When did that happen roughly? Exactly.
It's actually there's a book. I'll put the cover up and I'll go through it. It's called
Sure.
second.
I guess what I'm kind of speaking to is like sort of like the Victorian idea of nobility in the
That's
sense
it.
that like hey, I think this person is like doing something wrong, and I want to challenge them to a duel, and like through my own persistence and honor, if I am a noble and just person, um, I will come out victorious. And you don't have that nowadays, and I think that's really, we have all these laws and shit. It's like there's these laws have like um
It's all
killed off
sexual liberal.
nobility.
It's all
No.
about vice, like enslavement to like this sexual freedom, and you should sleep with as many people as you can, and that's what being successful is. That is a status
Mm-hmm.
symbol, and also that you can do it and it doesn't cost anything. It does. You can, if you sleep with somebody, there's no cost to it. It's all free. That's not true. That's a lie. That's a big lie. And everybody now that they've fallen for it, and that's the way that they, like this is what they thought the world was, and so they do that, and now they don't feel anything anymore. Well, it's actually because it's not
Yeah.
free. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think these two movements are different. I think they're basically the same movement. I think what you're talking about, that idea of challenging authority, it is really uh, the best way to put it is that you're voluntarily trading your sovereignty for self deification.
I'm not sure I quite understand that. Could you explain that a little?
So by
Like, because
self
let me
deification, you
explain
can do
where I'm
whatever you
coming.
want.
Okay, I do think that um, in terms of like the zeitgeist of how people think, we have certainly moved from, that sort of, the Victorian idea of romanticism to this, fixation of superficiality in how um, society structures, laws have been organized around that, and how, in a sense, above that, we sort of deny that that is the case. That is sort of the kayfabe, I think, of it, is that we pretend to um, as take on these uh, noble ideas and noble pursuits, like among members of Congress and whatnot. Anthony Fauci, like, oh, we're gonna get him this time, or he's gonna be found in contempt of court. When I think if there were any true justice, that dude would have his head on a pike in the town square,
Right.
and
I mean,
but
they've got all
I
these
think
private
we're,
armies and security now.
but for better or worse, I think we're actually heading in a dialectic sense to that sort of thing. I
Well,
think there's a reversal happening right now.
well, back. Let me connect it almost in a way, because what we're talking about, you know, when people stopped being able to feed their kids in France, then they started cutting heads off. But that was called liberalism at the time. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
that word's been bastardized a lot, and
but we're liberal. Like the
mhm.
French Revolution and the American Revolution were one and the same thing, except
Yeah,
one technically worked out and one didn't. And
hmm,
so it's all, and that is kind of why I base it on saying that I think all of these stem from that idea of I could do whatever I want and there's no consequences. But really,
okay,
once you know the truth, you're free to make a choice. It's the difference between the word
Yeah.
to be free and to be sovereign.
Yeah. Uh,
Like there's a difference, but most people don't know what it is.
yeah. Yeah.
And the difference is that once you know the truth, you're free to make a choice. You're not free to do what you want to do, but you're free to know the consequences. So like if you do that, that's what's going to happen. So you're free in the sense that you're free to know what's going to happen, because you have
hmm
wisdom as a human with consciousness and we'd call it intellect, I guess. It once you're, you know, free, you've informed yourself of the consequences, and now you're like, okay, if I do this, I know what's going to happen. That's what freedom is.
Yeah. I think freedom definitely. And I'd like to really bring people back though, and because I think that those ideas are noble and whatnot, but I'd like to bring people back to like a very real sense of like what money is,
Go ahead.
and just how much the the idea of $39 trillion. I think it is
Most people can't
unfathomable.
there's no way to like you and I really have a hard time comprehending it because there's no need for any of us to use a number that big.
Yeah, I don't think it's fathomable to anyone, and that's what these people have done. Like, what we owe that much interest on this? Like, there should have been like a revolution in
That
heads being cut off for much less.
I'm telling you, man, it like people don't. They're literally they don't possess the mathematic basic like economics.
Well, I think they do, but I mean, I think it's all been like we've all kind of taken part in this kayfabe show where we keep being told that, oh no, things are gonna change, they're gonna get
Let me put
better.
it this way:
But
maybe you're a little bit older than me. I'm 27. People in my
okay,
generation, they don't know. They don't know anything about it. They don't know about inflation. They don't know about taxes. They don't know about math. They don't know about it.
that'd be interesting. Like, I don't really like, what is your
I
generation like? What's the
I've
sort
seen
of
kids.
feeling of your generation going through? Yeah.
I've seen kids younger than me who don't know how to count change and they don't know how to read a clock.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. What was your like education upbringing like?
Really, I'm kind of from Ohio. I'm a rural, so I'm really not. I didn't go to college. All self-taught. So
Were you like a homeschool kid or something?
no, I went to public school.
Okay.
I
I'm
mean, it
just
was
trying to.
smaller. It was smaller. That's not as big as what most people are used to. It's really small out here. Very,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like the city. The cities are
Okay,
disgusting.
okay, okay. So you're 27, all right. So you were like what, 2 when 9/11
I was
happened?
born in '99. I don't remember 9/11.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's like a
It's
thing that
crazy.
like a lot of because your generation, you never saw the like the stark shift. So, well, actually, because like in 2005 probably it was pretty like things were like pretty okay and like kind
I
of
saw the
cool
shift.
still. Yeah, yeah. I think the shift probably happened like around 2000, probably 2009 ish, 2010 or something like that.
Yeah,
So
maybe 2009,
you kind of
2008 to
had
12.
a childhood. You were around like when like Halo and stuff was probably cool and
Yeah.
shit. Like
We were like the last little bit that got it. I literally, when I graduated high school,
mhm.
like 2 years after I graduated is when COVID happened, and it was all different after that.
Oh wait, so so
2018 when I graduated.
2018 when you graduated high school? Oh shit. And
Yep.
then COVID happened a year later. Wow. Well, Well, you've been on like a fucking mission too, dude, with like your Substack and shit. Like you've been like you must have been putting in the hours. You must have had like I think
I
you're
didn't
way more focused
I didn't
than
plan
I
on
was as a
didn't plan
kid.
on I learned
What's
to
that?
code. I learned to code, but obviously now those people are kind of screwed because of AI. But I
Does it really
still
do
enjoy
that
it.
much though? Because like I'm in journalism. Like I write
Time
like
will
all the
tell.
time. But
But
I can tell when somebody writes an AI text. I because can you tell like when AI code is there and like as opposed to human code?
it sometimes, but I think that's you'll probably have a better time like not telling. Like it passes for human better when you're doing coding than when you're doing writing. Because AI fundamentally is a machine. And so when you're telling a machine to code another machine, I think that's actually kind of within what it could do well. And I know that if you have a person who knows how to code and they know how to use it like well and they know how to like use it as a tool, it's very effective. But at the
Hmm.
same time, because there are people who went and studied it or people who wanted to go into that as a career field, at the very least,
Yeah.
if it's not dead, and I think it may make a comeback when they figure out that nobody knows how to code because the next generation doesn't know how to use computers. That surprised me because my
Hmm.
generation was great with computers. Like that was like we were just like
Yeah.
naturally able to do it. And I was like, man, the
Hmm.
next generation's definitely going to be way better than we were, and that's not the case. It's because they these new iPads and stuff will read it for you. It will you can speak and dictate. You don't have to write it. And so a lot of
Hmm.
people literally have kids now, and their kids have to use voice like that because they don't know how to read or write.
That and I don't think kids should have anything to do with
I
iPads.
know, and it's actually like
Yeah.
one of those things where it's so poisonous. People have to kind of like see what's going on around them, right? And that's people
I
not
think
seeing
I
it.
think one of the biggest things in this is something I you could probably check out. I don't know if you've heard of him. Do you know who Jack Kruse is?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine. He's a neurosurgeon and he he explores sort of the link between like his big thing is light, water, magnetism. Those are like his
Makes
big
sense.
three pillars about health and like how to stay healthy. And he goes into explaining like how human beings have a certain relationship with water. Like you need like water that's like not heavy, which is to say like not doesn't have deuterium in it. So there's certain types of water like I think spring water might be a good option. And then magnetism, like it's important for people to have a healthy relationship with magnetism. So like living in certain parts of the world are like healthier, like living near mountains or something. And then um, light. Uh, People have to have a certain relationship with light because the light that you get from the sun is not the same light that you get from a iPad. And what he found was that the blue light from screens actually has a an effect on your mitochondria,
It's
which
really rad.
it,
It's really
it
bad.
yeah it like I don't maybe I mean it certainly harms your mitochondria.
I got. Speaking of, I got a visual on that. There's like a whole chart that I came across the other day
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that talks about this. It's just like it just talks about all the just a big list of all of the different studies that were done on it and just what they found basically. Let's see. Go on. You can go ahead. I'm gonna find it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But he like just goes into like how all these damaging effects caused by blue light and like he I mean he came to this conclusion because he was a neurosurgeon in this play in this New Orleans hospital, and they had this giant machine called a LINAC machine, and this kind of actually relates to JFK, although I probably can't explain how it does, like because this is his story and this is his finding. I suppose in the sense that there's connections to New Orleans and JFK, but anyway, what they were doing was they were engineering cancers, like ways to make people like get cancer. So like they had this giant thing called the Lineac machine. It's a giant like it's a machine that like fills up 3 stories of a hospital, and it uses radiation and light. And so the person who like made it found that if you apply a certain spectrum of light and a certain type of light, it will cause cancer. And this is like when they were experimenting with a thing called SV40, which is like a thing that promotes cancer. It comes off the kidney cell of a green monkey, I believe.
Huh?
And uh, yeah, I can't recall how this relates to JFK, but um, yeah, uh, I did. That is part of part two. That's like a whole other section of part two uh, in my
There was
documentary.
um, there was odd. I'm gonna find that list later. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on where I saved it at, but it's a big list. There's a lot. I just did a video about all of the EMF and stuff. There's a lot of damaging side effects, not
Yeah,
just from the light, but from all of the radiation and the
yeah, for
you're
sure.
you're absolutely on the dot for what did you say? You said light, magnetism, and water.
Yeah, light, water, and magnetism. Yeah, I would attribute the EMF stuff to like I guess maybe he would
It's
because he's like a
magnetism.
neurosurgeon. Yeah, to the magnetism aspect of it. But I don't think we should undersell like how important like the relationship is with light that people have. I think one of his things that he says, and this is just for everyone, is like the best thing you can do for your health is to get the morning sun because that's a different type of infrared light than the sun overhead because it's going through so many filters of the atmosphere. So that's really good healthy light, and people need to get that. I think I would assume the same thing applies to sunset, but to have that circadian relationship, uh, morning light is important.
I found that
That's also
uh,
why I'm wearing these my glasses because the the screen hurts my
for
eyes and fucks them up.
I was going to say a lot of what there's another effect that we I did a video on a couple of days ago called the calcium efflux effect. And
Uh
really,
huh.
what this does is, and this was directly in relation to EMF, like radiation and stuff like that, and it has to do with really how I guess you could call it clarity. Like it has to do with how fast your cells, or your neurons respond and fire. It kind of has a tendency to make people docile. It makes people some kind of sluggish and zombie like, or it can make people irritable, on edge, ready to snap.
Hmm.
And but this really what it does is it just kind of makes uh, your neurons not fire as well. They don't respond as well. There's a list of side effects, but the only way that I really can articulate all of them without like finding the list and going down through it is that it's just like um, foggy or a um, just makes them work worse.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
But it's called
I'm
the
not like
calcium efflux effect.
a biochemist. I mean, but yeah, it makes sense. I mean,
Just sounds like a
I
lot of
think I've
what
heard of it.
people today are experiencing.
Yeah,
Here, I
I
found
haven't
the
heard.
chart. This is I found this on the Internet Archive, and the whole thing had like 60 some files in it. But this is reported biological effects from radio frequency
Oh,
radiation at low intensity exposure, such as cell tower,
interesting.
Wi-Fi, wireless, laptop. And then all this is it gives you. There's another sheet that gives you all of the full titles and stuff, but it
Hmm.
tells you what they are, what the study said, and just like a cheat sheet kind of. And there, it's
Oh,
also
very
color
cool.
coded.
Wow, yeah, that's very cool. Can you pause in one section? I just want to like kind of read like one thing.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit slower.
No, that's fine right there. So like I guess RFR would be like what, radio frequency or something? Induced
Maybe
pathological leakage. RFR induced double strand DNA damage in rat
ra-
brain cells.
radio frequency radiation is my guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I don't know if I could decipher too much of that. I was really at the edge of my wits when COVID hit, and I was like trying to like, wake up the public to like, not only to the fact that a bioweapon was unleashed on us through the virus, the mechanism of a virus. A second bioweapon was released on us through the mechanism of the vaccine.
Well, then
Uh,
they just spray it on us constantly.
yeah, that too. But the 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 mechanisms are important as well. I would believe that
Turns you into a radio antenna.
the vaccine or the cloud seeding stuff.
All of it together, because it creates a wireless body area network. That's what, like,
Huh.
when those flock cameras, they're talking about how it can like pick and detect these. That's what they had recently discovered, that they're not just watching and like for car license plates. They also can detect, you know, I don't remember the term they used, but it was basically any network that's in the vicinity of the camera. It has a way to pick up what is in reality a wireless sensor network, a wireless body area network. And
Hmm.
these
Well,
are
that's weird.
just there to
I'm
basically
not really
keep.
sure I know what that means, to be honest. Like,
I'll show you a diagram, because it's
is it
basically
what does that mean? Like the flock cameras are like tracking everyone's like
any devices that are around you can interface with the what the vaccines and what all of this does is it introduces nano chips, but are called meta surfaces. They can be
hmm,
fully programmable. They can program how much light reflects, how much of a certain chemical gets through. They can PLGA, polylactic glycolic acids. These are it's like really advanced stuff, and they can do a lot with it, but they're not using it for good things. But what they're doing is
hmm.
it gives the ability for data to be collected and people to be hooked into the network no matter where they're at. So you don't it can just interface with devices in the paint, in the you know infrastructure. They call it edge environments. The edge
So
means embedded in the
what
environment.
like so in a sense like the cell phone actually interacts with the cells of your body or something?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
like that.
Well. Oof. Okay. Huh.
Oh wait, you want to see? Do you want to see what a utopia looks like?
I don't know. Do I?
Well, it's like this is what when they see it in Silicon Valley, they're like, "Man, this looks like a utopia."
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I don't know if you shared that with me or I saw it on one of your pages.
I did probably it
Uh
was one of the videos I did recently.
okay. Yeah. The yeah, and I don't think a lot of people are really happy about
They don't like.
all these tech bros coming in. I don't-
I mean, I get it. Like that, nobody's happy, but it's like people have to acknowledge like this is happening to them first. Like they have to wake up and realize that like sometimes there's not emergencies, but this is definitely an emergency, and you better wake up now. Titanic's sinking.
Well, when that, with this thing like with all this stuff going on, this is something I used to like lay in my bed thinking about when I was 5 before any of this stuff was going on.
Well, this
I
is the
spent
first year that the flock cameras started popping up so fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember specifically having like this kind of thought what I'm about to say is like it never made sense to me, like, to like shit where you eat. Like, it just blows my mind. So like, you have all these people that are like poisoning society, that are, you know, putting all this surveillance stuff, and okay, the people that are putting this up, where are you going?
They're
Because
not
you
like
still have
us.
to live. Well, no, because they still have to live in a society full of poison stuff, and okay, maybe
They
they
can
can like
they can drill
afford a,
underground.
but there's no refuge underground. Like what I was mentioning earlier about light, like a person needs light to grow. They need
Only if they're like you.
yeah, only if they're normal
No,
people.
that's the point. And here's the truth. They don't like people have asked me before, like, how do I know that they're aliens? And it's not that. It's like they want you to call them that because that's how they see themselves. They don't want to be like
I
that.
suppose it's not help. I mean,
They
to
resent
act.
everything that
To,
basically that water magnetism light thing, anything like that, they resent it because they think that that's a limiting factor of the human condition. And they want to get rid of that.
I that probably would explain why they look like reptiles. I think that's sort of a pseudo way of looking at that sort of
That's what people don't, that's the
bores
part.
out to be true.
That's what people like. There's an extra layer to that, and I think that's what you're referring to, like the fact that oh yeah, they're reptiles, but maybe it's like a figure of speech in the way that I'm saying it,
Yeah, I think
and
it is a figure of speech. Yeah, it's
that's
like
actually all the case. Like that's not just for that. Like for all of the times that people like seems like they misinterpret things or like they don't get the point. That's why.
yeah, I think yeah, I think it's right there. Like you put yourself in a position to live like a reptile, you're going to end up looking like one,
Yes.
and I think that's what we found out. Um, I,
Mythos.
did you? I'll just throw this. Did you want to segue to
Yeah.
JFK stuff at all, or
Absolutely. Go ahead.
okay? Oh, I don't know if you have a clip? Did you have another clip you have queued up, or did you go through them all, or do you want
I
to?
mean, you could go if there was one that you had in mind for that. Let's go to that. That's fine.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, there is one. I'll probably just like talk on it briefly, but okay.
If you want to give me the
Let me
timestamp, I can.
sure. Let me find the timestamp real quick. Can you still see me? I'm in a different
Yeah.
window. Okay. Uh,
Well, I don't see your screen. You don't have it shared, but you can just tell me.
yeah, I'll just let you know. For the people watching at home, I tried to share my screen, but I was unable to get sound. So
You have to go
I
into
have
your
to.
permissions, like in your browser. But I just looked that up, like after we did like started the stream. So we have to worry about that another time. So we
Yeah,
did try though.
I am experiencing my millennial boomer limit where I am uh, incapable of understanding technology. Yeah, it's at like the 57:45 mark, I would say.
1.5 still, right?
Uh, up or one, no, just 1.0 actually, because I think the times might be a little different, might
Okay.
be slightly different.
And what did you say it was again?
57:45.
Okay. Got it right here. 57.
But we don't have to go through the whole thing because the whole thing's like 15 or 20 minutes. So,
Yeah, that's fine. We'll put
but
it 20 minutes.
just a little bit of it.
In these last 6 months that we can never go back and retrieve. And it's not only unfortunate, it's borderline criminal. Yeah. And I'll yield back with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley.
As far as terrorism is concerned, except in the immediate aftermath of some IRA outrage, we tend to be a nation believing it can't happen.
In early July 1979, a conference was held. It was called the Jerusalem Conference on International Terrorism and commissioned by the Jonathan Netanyahu Institute, an organization headed by Benjamin Netanyahu and named after his slain brother. Speakers of the event included the self-described greatest terrorist in the world, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, the de facto head of Israel's nuclear program, Shimon Peres, former CIA Director George H.W. Bush, and the former French colonial governor of Algeria, head of the French OAS terrorist organization, the Frenchman who helped Israel with its nuclear project, Jacques Cousteau, as well as many other power brokers, politicians, and elites from the Western world. The aim of the conference was twofold: start a propaganda campaign to frighten the West into supporting Israel's aims, make them fear the Arab, and make Israel the Middle East regional hegemon by degrading and splitting up the Arab states. 2 months after the campaign started in 1979, the head of Israel's Mossad, Isser Harel, told Zionist author Michael D. Evans that Arabs would attack New York City's tallest building, which is a symbol of its fertility. On the evening of September 11, 2001, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a decades-long endeavor, the carefully planned campaign, was announced to the public by George W. Bush. The United States would be fighting the pre-planned war against terrorism. There was no time to investigate the crime scene of 9/11 because those in power were complicit in the crime, a mob racket.
We took all the risks
I think that's good right there.
during the fight.
I was gonna say what I thought of. Have you ever seen the watch photo?
Sorry, couldn't the watch photo?
Yeah, with David Rockefeller, and his watch is set to 9/11.
No, I've never seen that before. That's
And he's sitting right
that's
where
really
the
crazy.
towers would be right behind him.
That's really crazy.
That was on the other
Wow.
cover on the other side.
Wow. Oh, wow. I've never seen that before. That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy, and it's like things like that are what give me all these wild ideas about what happened. And I'm sure you too, but it's like,
No,
I don't know why
it makes
people act like
sense.
it's so like why like you think they're like wow you're nut job. It's like how could you ever think there's like this wild conspiracy? And it's like how could you think it's not weird when you
I
see
mean,
a picture like this? Like, but it's not just this. There's like all the movie scenes that you
I
used and stuff like that. There's so many. It's like how
I think well if it's somebody who's never like invested any like interest into this stuff before, if they're just looking at that, they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. A guy with a watch on 9/11. But when you keep seeing the same things over and over and
right.
over and over again, and it's all prefacing that, you know, something's going to happen to the Twin Towers, something's going to happen to the Twin Towers, something's going to happen to the Twin Towers, 9/11, da da da, you know, all these things that keep coming up, you know, and pushed out by who? By our media, by Hollywood, and you
That
know,
was the start of the fear programming because that gave them the license for fear. Everybody had to live in fear, and that was why there's almost a, you know, the way that George Bush was in the school reading. He was reading a book, My Pet Goat, and it's a play on
mhm.
words. You, the whole country, are now our pets because you're going to live in fear. You're going to be on an animal farm. It's a spell cast. It's a sick spell cast.
You know, maybe like a few months ago, I would have said that was crazy.
Sorry, that was my phone.
you're good. But yeah, I think these people like they're really all about symbolism, and you know, I guess that they think that they're of a higher importance because they use symbols to communicate
I
with
don't.
each other in public and
I
whatnot.
think sometimes like it does communicate. It's more akin to like you're representing something. Like the same reason that maybe somebody who is in a gang or something wears a certain color. It's that reason. But there is this interesting phenomena that like the and this only comes from seeing a lot of it. I mean, I'll say that. But the more I see, there like things like this. But I've seen numbers and stuff line up too much like this, and I've seen so much that I don't even think that the best minds available could plan things to the level that they seem to be planned to. It's almost like there's some invisible hidden hand, but like in a spiritual sense. It's like something's almost driving these people. There's kind of like I don't know. There's something else there, and that's the evidence of like a person who was one way, and then now they're not the same person that you remember.
I think it's just like a lack of any sense of moral uh, obligation. Uh, I like.
They don't have
I
the
think.
ability to. They're
I think
parasites.
there's. I, I think with like Christian religion, there's a compulsory aspect to acting in a moral way. I think that's part of it. Yeah. If you're a certain type of person, I also think that like it does do something like it can teach you to uh, be moral, and sort of doing good for goodness sakes makes you feel good, and that's good enough. Uh, with a lot of these people, I think any sense of like uh, fear of you know doing something immoral is not there
They
for
don't
them.
have that.
And I'm not saying that people should be promoted to act out of fear of doing something wrong, but I think that you
Well,
know things
but
are paradoxical, and that is part
they're
of it.
they're motivated not by like it's not fear of
Well,
doing something wrong.
I'm
It's fear. It's just fear. They're just motivated by fear. Like I'm gonna do
no,
something
I don't.
bad to you.
No, I
Like
don't
if
think
you
they
don't
are. No, no, I don't think they are.
blackmail.
What I'm saying is that like people like this, people like Rockefeller that you just pointed out, um, they're operating in a place absolved of it, absolved of fear. They
That's true.
they're searching for their next big hit because they've made
That's
all
true.
the big hits. There's nothing left for them to hit, and so I think maybe that's where the weird child pedophilic murder PDF stuff comes in. Like I think maybe that's got to be part of it.
Mind control
Um,
too. It like traumatizes kids. Like that's literally how
yeah,
they do the programming.
yeah,
But
that is. But in terms of like these people themselves, um, I
they're raised
I
that
feel
way.
like I feel like they see themselves as God because they. Well, let me speak to the Jewish aspect of it real quick. Like when these people who like have the ego that they're ordained by God to do anything, and that basically means anything is permissible, and you know you don't have to abide by the rules of the society. You don't have to abide by to any sense of decency within yourself, because what God ordained you. So you
I've never done anything wrong. Trump. This is something that Donald Trump said. He said, "Why would I ever ask for forgiveness if I've never done anything wrong?" They don't understand that they've done anything wrong.
I you know I've never heard that Trump quote, but when he said it, I could totally hear him saying that. So it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Well,
Uh,
it's like literally it holds them up though. Like it's like if they don't like I have all, like, let's say David Rockefeller, because that was the example. It's a good example. If you have all the money in the world, like, how could I have done anything wrong? Obviously, I was right because I've got all this money. So they literally, it's almost
Mhm.
in a way like, and they were raised in that, like, that's the reason that they traumatize their kids is because it makes them like snake, reptile, evil people, and that's who leads. Like that's they think that okay, if all of the psychopaths go into leadership roles, then we'll just make our kids into psychopaths. And that's the purpose. A big chunk of all of the stuff is it passes the trauma and the like it makes people dead inside and they don't feel anything and they can do evil things. And then eventually they go on like that. They get all the money in the world and like how what do I got to apologize for? That's how they look at it. But it is inverted. It really is almost perfectly inverted. It's too neatly inverted. It's like all it's just anything good that you can think of. Just like imagine something just like as evil on the other end. But that also tells me that if
Mm.
this evil exists, then there has to be some counter greater good because you can't have one without the other.
Uh,
You can't have
I
black without
certainly hope
white.
so. I certainly I do hope. I do
It,
hope. I
I'm not saying in
in
this
my
world.
in me.
I
In
don't,
me I hope.
I'm not saying that the
It's
good is in this world.
no, I'm I'm saying like I do hope. Like I do believe that there is good and that there is, you know, a counterbalancing force and you know, I I do not feel any sense of guilt by wanting these people removed from reality. Like I do not like for what they've done to you know to so many people. It's like death would be too kind. like like they should be drug across the road by like five like by 50 goats.
Right? That would be fitting. But
Just
this, yeah, it's but this idea that they lack privation, they lack everything that like the things that you talked about that are better, like what you should look at to make your health and your well-being better. Those are the qualities that make us human, and they basically lack pretty much all of those things. But like what I meant is it's perfectly inverted that way. It's like all of those things, it seems like they either deliberately or maybe not deliberately perfectly forego and lack and hate and trash on those things.
hmm, yeah, yeah. Uh, I think that's personified in none better than Jeffrey Epstein.
Right?
Um, and you know, it was funny. Like a few a few weeks before the Iran war broke out, the Epstein files were released by uh,
Right?
Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, and I remember telling my friend, "These people aren't gonna let it go. They're gonna they're gonna start some shit." And you know, lo and behold, you know, right after the drop of the Epstein files, where were we? Trump starting a war with Iran,
When all else
and it's
fails,
like
they take you to war.
I mean, it's so on the nose. Every I know I can't be saying to myself, "Am I the only one seeing this?" I know other people see it. I know other people know. And when you just you shove that in people's face for so long, you know, I'm not a fucking dog, all right? You shove my face in the shit for no fucking reason for this long, people are gonna snap back. And um, whereas I'd like for people to like come to this epiphanal moment about 9/11, which I tried to like, you know, give to the public and like give them a reason to like wake up. And with JFK, I've had to accept that, you know, perhaps that's past, and perhaps that, you know, the anger that people have felt at that moment, um, they do not feel like they can capitalize on it. But it's the same thing with Charlie Kirk, and maybe people, maybe, and I think the elites are afraid. I think
They are.
maybe the pendulum could swing in the other direction. And
That's why
it
they
seems,
started this conflict, a big part of it. And I just mean why everything's starting at this time. It's because when all else fails, they have no other option because they know like if people get together and they figure out what's happening, that we outnumber them. They know this. You know, they've seen this. They probably have plenty of ancestors who've been killed by the mob, and that's another reason that they have such intense hatred for us. Because there's no way out of the great conflict. It really is a great conflict. There's never been any other greater conflict. It's always been the biggest mass against the smallest 1%, because in all real true ways, pretty much there is no way that we can't not be enemies because of the size. Like even if we the like 100% of like the masses, all of us agreed not to do anything, they would still have a paranoia. Like, oh man, like what if one of those 900 million people out there get the wrong idea? And then they would like take measures to prevent that, and then we would see that. It's just there's no other way. This is the great controversy between great great controversy, great conflict, whatever you want to call it, between good and evil.
uh-huh, yep, yep, I agree.
But some people don't want to acknowledge that there's even this is a thing.
Yeah, there's it's kind of like a meme on the internet. You got like I was just looking at it today. You got like the psychopath on one side, and then you got the schizo in the middle, and you got the normie on the other side. And it's
Yeah,
like the schizo's like out here like trying to tell everybody like all the crazy shit that's going on. And it's like we got great pattern recognition. We can tell you all these things, but like the normie just doesn't want to hear it. And I think the normies are hearing it. I think they're starting to wake up. I mean, I pride myself on having a good gut, a good gut intuition about things, and
it goes back
uh,
to you have to acknowledge, and at least I think that like, man, don't have to take my word for it. Here's all of the research that I found. Here's why I came to this decision. Here is what I think, and here's all the information you need to figure it out yourself. This is what I found, but you don't have to believe it. That's my everything I do. That's my perspective. I learn in the process of like when I do shows. You know, if I'm talking about a subject, I actually am teaching myself at the same time as I'm teaching an audience, and that's the best way to learn. But I think people get so caught up in being like right or wrong, or like, okay, I've definitely got the right answer, so why would I ask for forgiveness if I've done nothing wrong, or if I've got the right answer? Why do I need to look for the right answer if I've already got it? Knocking it or seeking you shall find, asking it will be given, knock and the answer will be given unto you, that type of thing.
I don't think I can answer that. If I'm being honest.
You just have
Um,
to ask the question.
yeah, and I'm just a curious person. Like I just ask questions. That's what I got into journalism. Like, uh,
It's
I
all
got
about
into
questions.
journal. I got into journalism because I don't know, and I like being curious. That's what made it interesting. I got into it because it's interesting. Um, Unfortunately, um, we're put in a position where, you know, our attention for what's interesting is just been like hijacked, and it's just like
Yeah.
here's a video of what was it, Modern Family or something, I don't know, whatever that show is with Sofia Vergara. I, I'll tell you what. I wanted to like one thing that I think is like a source of evil in our world, and I mean this with my heart, is whoever made the vertical scrollable short video. I think that person should be condemned to death. Like
Yeah, that was a really
that
good
was
poison.
that was like one of the worst inventions of like hijacking uh human attention and just like with just slop, just bullshit. Because nobody's ever gonna get anything out of a YouTube short. I mean, nothing. There's nothing. I can't imagine anything anybody could get out of a YouTube
As a
short.
content creator, the way that I view them is to bring people to the main content. So it's not meant to
Yeah,
be entertaining. It's just like the way that people should be using them, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is to like
I
promote, but people don't like, even if people did that, it's not like the most people look at them that way.
no, I get that. I just mean as a concept in itself.
No, you're right. I
Um,
agree with you.
I, as a whole, I think it's had like a huge damaging effect
It's the
on.
formula.
If we could formula,
It's
yeah,
like the
I
way that
just,
you do the endless scroll.
I really just mean the shape. Like I'm really basic about it. Like just the shape. Like I do not think, I think it, whoever made the idea that you should have like a vertical rectangle that you should stare at, and and it's a different image every minute or so. That person should be condemned to death. Like I fully believe that. Like there are crimes that persist beyond the metaphysics of our legal system that are not treated as such. And I and that's such a huge shift in the Overton window of things that I don't think it will be addressed, but I think it is serious.
Okay, seriously.
anyway, yeah, you got a few of my rants that I've been
Yeah, man.
thinking about.
I really enjoy all the films, and I think maybe once I have a little bit of time to watch the second one, maybe in a week or two, we can do another show or something and talk about the second one. But I
Yeah,
think
I'd be
really good stuff.
for you. I think that would be good for like a paywall version of,
That'd be a good idea.
because if you're gonna watch the paid version of like part four, is what I'm assuming you're talking, because that's the only other one left.
Just, I
Uh,
honestly, I would like to get through a couple more of them because I know that there's not just the first one.
well, I mean, there's only like part two and like part 1.5, so like, or half of part two is part 1.5, and then you got 10 minutes in the other one, and then part four, which is like an hour. Um, but yeah, so those are like paywalled, and I would prefer like just do like a paywall, because like
We could
they're
do an
they're
exclusive. That would be a good idea.
yeah, because there's like a big epiphany in there, and
Let's do it.
uh, I I want people,
I
because
got you. That's okay. It's like you
I
made the documentary, put the time into it, and you want the
well,
payoff. I get it.
it's not
It's great
just
stuff.
that.
It's good work.
No, it's not just about that. It's like knowledge that isn't earned. It's wasted.
That's true.
So I feel like if people like don't put an effort into like chipping in $5, which was normal, it was normal. Like
Cheaper than a
in
movie
my
ticket,
childhood, you would like go to Blockbuster and rent the video.
right?
But I get that we've been so saturated with free information. But I think that opens up a space where people can feel like they earned it, because spending $5 on a movie is such an anomaly nowadays. Uh, I think it'll be well worth it, and you will find something in there that has not been put together anywhere, and will put many of the things in the world in context.
Cool.
So
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we will do some exclusive stuff together. Maybe we can do one for each other's channel, or maybe like a 2-part series, one for your channel, one for my
Or
channel.
you, I no, you don't have to worry about it. Like you can just, I'll just do it for you, man. It's
Okay.
no big deal.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to go and watch the second. Did you say there was a fourth one?
Yeah. So there's part one, and then I know I gotta like make it less confusing. This is my
Probably.
fault. Um, and then there's part 1.5. So in part 1.5, it's still the same thing as part one, only with half of part two. So, and then the whole middle section of part two isn't there, but I actually did a read through of what people would be watching. So if you go on my Twitter profile, yeah, can you go on my Twitter profile and people will see what I mean?
Yep. 1 second. Bring it up now.
Okay. Yeah, so you scroll down till you see JFK in a Texas accent, kind of. Yeah. Um, that it's 6 hours, but it was just a Twitter space. Anyway, um, I go through the script of what the lawyer the lawyer is Jim Garrison. Jim Garrison is the guy who um tried Clay Shaw in the JFK trial. So this is like a reimagining of that, of what the trial would be if he had all the information at his disposal. So that's what you would have watched had I put it in video form at the end of part 1.5. And then on my Substack, there is the sneak peek of the end of part 2. So that would be the end of part 2.
Okay.
Part 3 is not out yet at all anywhere. It's conceptual. And it's not conceptual. It is getting worked on and made, just not out. And then part 4 is out completely. So it's kind of,
that was
it's
what I was confused on, I guess.
yeah. So there's a lot, and there's no explanation out there. This is the first time I've ever given that explanation. But I tried to like George Lucas it in a way. So like, you got episodes 3, 4, 5, and then you kind of go back to part 1, 2, 3. Only mine's split up, so that doesn't really work as an analogy. But yeah, it's not sequential, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Well, okay, that makes it a little bit clearer. I still will probably get through all of the content that you got out, though. I would like to do that, and then we can do some more stuff on it. Maybe in a day or two, or just whenever we could do a space or something. Maybe once you and I think of something to bounce off of from this interview, and maybe I'll watch some more, and then we could do a space on whatever ideas pop into our head based on that.
Yeah.
In addition to whatever we're going to do for the second one. But I liked the stuff that we did. I liked all of the talks that we got into, and I think it would work for us to do some more stuff together.
Cool. Yeah, I'm totally down. Space sounds cool. I'd totally be down to do that. And do another one of these as well. I'd be down for both of those things. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, and I really would like everybody to check out your Substack, your YouTube, and on X. Let me go ahead and scroll up so everybody can see your X. And I didn't know that you had the link tree, but there's your link tree as well. Give him a follow, and let us know what you think. Questions, comments, concerns. Let us know.
Yeah, please tell me. Everybody, tell me your concerns.
Well, I really think that the stuff that you've done so far is great, and I think you have a great, promising future making documentaries.
Hopefully.
You know how to edit very well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I appreciate that, man. I really do.
I think you could do, like I'm saying, I think you could do other good stuff too. Like there's other subjects that I think eventually, once you you find something that you want to do, I think you should keep making documentaries.
Yeah, hopefully.
Really
check
good.
out my Substack. Subscribe so I can like make more cool shit.
Here, let me go ahead and show everybody your Substack again. It's called the Rocky Mountain Oyster.
Yes,
But it's his Substack is his name, Nick Koutsobinas,
yeah.
at
Unfortunately,
substack.com.
there was some fuck up and misapprehension. Oops, sorry. I don't know what's on YouTube.
It's fine. I don't care.
There was some misapprehension with like trying. I have the URL, but I couldn't implement it on my site for some technical reason I'm not capable of understanding yet. So hopefully that'll get squared away at some point.
If you guys are watching on Rumble or YouTube, the links are already in the description. So hit the like button, follow the channel, in addition to hitting those links in the description and checking Nick out. Nick, is there anything else you want to say before we close everything out?
Go outside in the morning and get some sun.
We'll leave it off with what? Light, water, and magnetism.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good.
Light, water, and magnetism. All right, Nick, thank you. I appreciated it. We will look forward to doing some more. Everybody, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. We will see you in the next one, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it.